Welcome to this month's Insight interview from the Payments Association. And I'm Tony Craddock. I'm the Director General of the Payments Association. Today I'm joined by a friend of mine who I've known and respected for almost 2 decades. We were just chatting on that earlier and we couldn't believe the time, how fast it had flown. And when I first met her, she came across as a no-nonsense, strong-minded, ambitious, I think she was a group sales manager who's definitely in the one-to-watch category. So when she moved from prepaid technology to what became prepaid solutions to eMerchants as head of strategy, and then to take on the role of CEO of what became EML in Australia, I was not at all surprised. So please welcome someone who is a passionate payments person through and through, the CEO of EML Australia, Rachelle St. Ledger.
Hi, and Tony, thank you so much for having me, and it's lovely to talk to you and see you today.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? The joys of modern technology. So Rachelle, at the start of every Insights interview, let's get straight to it. I always ask my VIP guest how they stay motivated and driven. What makes them go the extra mile? Because you're facing challenging jobs and home lives. And, you're leading a thriving business. The market's growing from what you just had. Your results came out yesterday, which was seriously impressive. It must be demanding on many levels. What is it that continues to drive you to go the extra mile?
I think it's got to be in your DNA. I think you have to be born with it. And it's that passion, and that's that passion that you have to have for your company. And it's that passion that you have to have for your people. And it's your passion that you have to have for your customers. If you don't have that, and I'm so fortunate because you mentioned the companies I've been with before, I had it when I was with Coles Myer, I had it when I was with Prepaid Solutions, and now I have it when I'm with EML. So I'm so lucky that every organisation I've worked with, I've felt this way.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it? But it's interesting because it's sort of beyond enthusiasm. Passion is beyond enthusiasm, isn't it? Okay. So if what are the guiding principles that help you achieve this performance? What is it that helps you to be passionate? What are the principles behind that?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple, and it might sound cheesy because it's also EML's values, but our people created our values, and so it's also a lot of what drives me. And our values are this actually. One is openness, and so you have to be open with your people, and you have to be open with customers, and you have to have quality conversations, and even if they're challenging, you have to have it. So that openness is one of my personal driving, I guess, guiding principles, and it's also coincidentally one of EML's. One team is also one of those guiding principles and those values. And one team meaning not department by department, or not region versus region, or being hierarchical. You're one team, and so you have to work as one team to deliver. That's one for me. Simplicity is one.
And how do you do that in a big global organization?
The one team and openness.
Yeah.
Sometimes it means working the mornings, and sometimes it means working the evenings.
Yeah.
And as you know, I was so fortunate to recently be over in the UK for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. That over communication, and when you're lucky, it's face to face. But we're doing it now, and it's okay. Worst case, it can be on Teams, and it's various forms as well. We do recordings and send them out for those that can't hear it in real time. Email, obviously, Teams, chats, but it's just important that you follow those principles. Being one team and being open.
Yeah, I think there's something about the follow through that I reckon with EML is characteristic. You're consistent. You're consistently high quality in your communication and your openness, and it's great to see that. Now, look, you live in Brisbane. You started off in retail. What was your first role in retail?
Checkout.
Checkout. That's cool. So you've gone from literally from the shop's floor right up to the top of the business. How cool is that? And was there anything when you were younger that kind of would have prepared you for the journey you're on? And what would your parents have predicted you become a business leader?
Yeah, so my father was actually 41 years in Woolworths. So very loyal, and I'm very loyal, being kind of 10 years with Coles Myer, 10 years with Prepaid, 10 years, or 7 years now, so hopefully a couple more years to come with EML. But he was very, very loyal. And so my first role was when I was, I think, 14 years and 9 months, you can start working in Australia. I was still at school on the checkout, working for Woolworths, of course. And when eventually I finished school and studied, I was studying a Bachelor of Commerce in retail. And I was still with Woolworths. And when they didn't promote me to service supervisor, they promoted one of the students who was studying medicine. I thought, that's crazy, you're stupid. And so got myself a job with their biggest competitor, which was Coles Myer. And I was on the shop floor while I was studying, and they had a division called corporate services. And that was, would you believe, selling gift vouchers to companies for rewards, incentives and loyalties. And I thought, I could do that. That sounds amazing. So I went and pushed myself to get the interview with corporate services, and got the role. And was part of the team that helped work with an outsourced provider to launch gift cards into Coles Myer, and it was the first gift card to launch in Australia. And then cold called my way eventually to the UK, spoke to Yvonne West in Sainsbury's, and she said, look, we've only got paper vouchers, but one day we'd love gift cards. And I said, well, who's a provider that you'd recommend? And there was two at the time, I won't mention the other. She said, you need to speak to Philippe Dufour and Prepaid Technologies. And she introduced me. We had interview with Philippe, interview with Ray Brush, interview with Gary Comley, and 10 years later, I was still working with them.
Wow, isn't that lovely?
But
what I love about this industry is so many people fall into it. You don't wake up in the morning and say, look, I'm going to get a degree in payments.
Well, I know. And who would have thought? Who would have thought? I mean, it's been like 25 odd years. Who would have thought that would have been the case? Who would have thought 22 decades ago, as you said before, that here you and I are talking and we're still in the same industry, although you're over there in the UK and here I am in Australia. So it's fascinating. But again, it's in your DNA. We have a passion for the people, the customers and the industry. It's awesome. So they I guess I followed in Dad's footsteps initially with retail, and then eventually got into payments, and here I am. And I remember my dad saying to me once, you're so organized, you'd make an amazing EA. And that would have been fantastic. But I thought, you know what? I don't want to be the EA to the CEO. I want to one day run that small company. And so here you go.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So right from the beginning, you wanted to be a CEO. That's lovely to hear. And I think drawing the contrast between different countries is interesting for you, because you've had the Australian marketplace and you've had the European one, and you came to the UK and then you moved back home. What's the differences? What are the differences between Europe and Australia, would you say? And what contrast can you draw between that and the rest of the Asia Pacific region?
Yeah. Well, so far within EML, our current focus is the Australian entity, although we have started to expand, dip our toe into New Zealand a little bit over the last couple of years. First of all, there's a lot of similarities. When you think about both regions, and when you think about and you asked before, our sectors where we're working in, and it's a large vertical of ours with the general purpose reloadable type space. And when we're working with customers over here, and we deal a lot with salary packaging, so we're dealing with the Macmillan Shakespeares, the Smart Groups, and a lot of their challenges and opportunities are very similar to our customer base that are in the UK and Europe, when we're dealing with the likes of organisations like PCS or Corios. They've got similar needs and challenges. You jump into the non-reloadable space where, okay, we call it gift and incentive, but actually we do also a lot in the non-reloadable space with government. And so whether it's over here and we're dealing with the Queensland government or the Northern Territory government for disaster recovery, or we are helping with Northern Ireland stimulus, or we're helping with those poor people in Ukraine, then again, it's quite often similar challenges that we are helping them solve. And then the same in the digital space, digital payment space. And actually, we work with a lot of organisations, not just in Australia. They might work with us here first, for example, but they actually then work with this across the globe as well. So there's a lot of similarities with the problems that we're trying to solve. One difference, I think, is Australia is a lot smaller. And so I feel, and this is as a country, but this is also within EML. And so when you're smaller, you can do things more quickly. And so when I think about even the payments landscape within Australia, gift cards took off quicker here before the UK and Europe. Chip and pin seemed to be more accepted here, and I remember the day over in the UK and Europe when it kicked off. Contactless, contactless is huge over here. And actually interesting, when I lived in the UK, I remember I caught a lot of taxis going meeting after meeting, and they would only accept cash. So I was pleasantly surprised when I went back the last couple of months, and thank goodness it was contactless or mobile payments that they were finally accepting. So I feel that I mean, and even mobile payments, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Google Pay, I felt we were earlier adopters here, and then the whole country gets behind it. And again, with EML, because we're smaller over here, we can test and learn things more quickly. Or if it's our infrastructure, I mean, for example, we have just gone cloud-based as opposed to hardware, and we're leading charge across the globe. Or our data warehouse, where we've gone first here, then the US, followed by the UK and Europe. We seem to be able to move fast.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That's cool. And I certainly we see progressive work on the infrastructure and other things coming out of Australia because of that. There's sort of you're like a hub of innovation, aren't you, in the country? And one of the things I wanted to touch on with you is to do with changing composition of the industry, and I'm thinking about the whole diversity issue here. Now, how advanced or how progressive or how effective would you say the diversity is in Australia compared to other parts of the world?
Diversity?
Yeah.
Meaning gender?
Yeah, gender diversity and ultimately diversity in terms of other, sexual orientation, ability, and other things.
Yeah, I mean, we're really proud as both a country, but also as a company as well. Diversity and inclusion is just so important. I mean, also take a look at our annual report. We've got a piece in there on diversity and inclusion, and Maria Rawdon, who's just fascinating, from a PR lady from over in the UK and Europe, a global PR lady, and leading charge. In fact, she's recently won on behalf of with EML award for all of her work around diversity and inclusion. So it's so important. When I first joined EML, it was a different world 7 years ago, and I remember my first offsite, which was in Montana, and there was 17 men and me. So it was crazy. But again, the world has changed, especially the last kind of 4 odd years. And I mean, we now are so proud across all elements, not just gender, as you said, as to how balanced we are across our teams, across all areas, how balanced as an organisation in terms of our leadership, in terms of our exec, in terms of our board, and aiming for that 50%, of course. So Australia and EML, very, very, very diverse. And do you know what? I think I'm really, really fortunate as a female, and I don't know if it's as a female or a female in payments, but I've never experienced anything else but inclusion.
Yeah, that's
which is fortunate.
Yeah, but that is cool, and I think it's also an example that you can set you can set to other people. And then when you hold that standard high, other people can look to you, for example.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So no, we should be proud as a country and proud as a company of we're leading charge with D&I.
Yeah, very good, very good. So let's go on to something slightly less upbeat, perhaps, which is the kind of the current economic landscape. I'd appreciate your comments and views on this. You know, when we came out of the pandemic, I think people predicted, or rather were hoping that we'd end up with an economic boost. And actually, we find ourselves in a position of stagflation, you know, no growth or low growth and inflation. Newspaper reports this morning saying there was some forecasts of 18% inflation in the UK before it peaks. But you know, we've also got reduced investment and potentially challenges to people's disposable and real incomes. And I don't think that's just a UK phenomenon. I was chatting to Andy, who's the CEO of OspeyNet the other day, and he was saying it's also a global phenomenon. You know, what are you seeing in your market, and what are you predicting for the next 3 years? You know, your company just posted really phenomenally good results. But what are you seeing for the next 3 years, and how can we prepare for it?
I think before focusing on the challenges, just very quickly to focus on the positives. Mm-hmm. And the positives is still in payments. And, you know, when we think about, look, everybody still needs to spend, don't they? And they still need to buy their groceries, and they still need to pay their bills. So I think we're also very, very fortunate in payments. And I was looking at some stats actually preparing for this, where, you know, the digital cash revolution and global cashless volumes increasing by 80-odd%. You know, the Allied Market Research looking at the global prepaid market increasing 1.73 trillion in 2019, expected to hit 6.87 trillion by 2030, and growing at that CAGR 18.2%. Global gift cards growing from 619 odd billion projected to hit over 2 trillion by 2027, again growing CAGR by 16.2%. So on a positive within our industry, it's fascinating how we're still growing, Tony, and bringing it back to Australia as well. And again, I keep bringing on, because this digital transformation is one of those trends. And in Australia, in March to May this year, we saw a reduction in cash by 40%, an increase in mobile payments by 41%, and an increase by 59% in terms of value. Look, rightly or wrongly, Australia's tipped to move away from cash by about 2025. So, so there's a lot of positive there for us to focus on.
Yeah. So there's some good stuff happening in our industry, but we can't pull up the ladder and expect that to be enough, because the backdrop around, particularly around investment, is uncertain. So do you see that changing, and if so, what impact will it have?
Yeah, and look, I think it's that it's in fintech too, where fintech have had such a boom, you know, rightly or wrongly over the last couple of years, and now, especially those that it was very much revenue driven, wasn't it? And their market values were almost driven by revenue, whereas now, you know, especially with investment, and investors have been hurt, they've lost money, and now it's really put pressure on those organisations to be cash positive, and you know, really to be profitable and to show growth, but not just in revenue, but also in profit. And yeah, I mean, that is key. And, you know, when you think about what's happening, and even across the world, where organisations are under scrutiny, even by, in some instances, regulators, you know, making sure dotting I's, crossing T's, etc., and the obligations that they're putting on, especially issuers, in many, many regions, and calling for a lot of investment, actually. I mean, it's painful in the short term. For some organisations, they're not going to survive as a result of it, because they're not going to be able to afford the investment that's required.
But that's not bad. That's not bad for a company like EML, because, you know, you're an acquisitive company. You've acquired PFS, and you acquired Centennial in the UK, and you've also acquired a lot of talent. It's nice to see Tessa Unsworth moving from PPS. She hung around a little bit longer than you did, moving to EML recently. But tell me a bit about the approach of EML, particularly in your three areas of GPR, gift, and incentive, and digital, and how it makes you a bit different. Here's your advertising slot.
All right. Well, as I said, we did. You said before we did post our results. Our growth has been 308% on our loads, which is amazing. Our revenues are up 21%. Our EBITDA was over 50 mil. And we're cash positive with about 70 odd million in the bank. So we are in a good position to invest more moving forward. And I guess, why would organisations trust someone like us? I mean, one, we are financially stable. We are, and we're growing. We've been around for over 16 odd years. And yes, that's EML, but that's also most of the companies that we've acquired along the way, whether it has been, to your point, PFS, or whether it was Perfect Card, or whether it was Centennial in open banking that we've also acquired. We've all been around for such a long period of time. When you think about our sectors and why people would choose us, so in the general purpose relatable space, or call that more now like payment as a service, or kind of banking as a service, it's where organisations in that particular instance may not want it to go to a bank account. It might be that it's an employee or a government benefit, and it needs to be redeemed in selected merchants. For example, it needs to the redemption needs to be controlled. So that's one element. It may be that, again, it's government, and the government want the funds to go to a particular person instantly. They may or may not want them to spend the funds on certain items. They may want the person to be only able to redeem those funds within 21 days, for example. And if you don't redeem it within that period of time, then they'll take the funds back. So it's really about control. And in addition to that, our third area is digital payments. And so with that, where we might power, for example, it might be some of the fintech, some of the buy now pay later companies, some of the more line of credit providers, where they could have had direct connections to so many merchants, but that takes forever to set up. So instead, use an open payment mechanism and restrict redemption to selected merchants. So in the past, that's been our focus. Where we're now moving is more what's beyond that, and what's really beyond cards. And for that really, and coming out of EML now, and I guess also finishing one of the questions you asked before around maybe what are some of the trends. And so some of the trends that we believe in. That digital cash revolution is going to continue. That growth in global kind of cashless payments is going to continue, and we're going to be the forefront of that.
Yes, and I think it's easy for us to think that the world is just UK and Australia, and of course it's really very much not. There's a huge number of countries whereby the move to cash to digital hasn't happened yet, but they're on the journey.
100%. Borderless, that borderless piece is going to continue to increase, and I think I was looking at some stats on that as well. Predicted to grow about 5% CAGR, US 156 trillion, in the near future. So, as well, making sure that, I mean, for us, our services and the payment industry caters for that seamlessly, effectively, in a controlled way is obviously key. I think another thing when we forward look, another kind of macro trend is, we talked before about people, and people want more than money these days. They want more than a salary. And you know what? They also want their salary when they want it. They don't necessarily want to wait fortnightly or monthly to be paid it. They want it, and they want to be able to access it now. And so again, being able to cater for that, we see as a macro trend, and something that's required moving forward.
Mm.
So they're probably some of the key macro trends. It's a little bit about EML and our areas, and that's a little bit about looking forward in terms of some macro trends as to where we're focusing.
That's very good. I think the audience will be enlightened by your kind of ability to weave in an insight about your organisation to an insight about the future. And I suppose to some extent they have to be aligned, don't they? Because the organisation has to be aligned to what you believe is going to happen in future. And I certainly concur with many of your views. And looking at some of the challenges we're facing, though, and again, I'm a compulsive optimist, so I tend to be a positive, upbeat most of the time. But I do get worried about the amount of fraud that's out there, and the amount of, or particularly authorized push payment fraud, which is the most invidious and unpleasant form because it really is about deceiving individuals through scamming. It's a problem, and it's getting bigger. What's to be done?
I think it's definitely having the right risk framework is absolutely essential. That investment is key as well, and making sure you've got the right systems, tools, processes, and skilled people to be able to support that. But it's also about education, isn't it? And it's when you think about, especially you said before, scamming, then it's also about education. And I guess everybody has their role to play in that, and actually governments should also have their role in playing that in terms of education to consumers. What they just being aware, because quite often it is down to what that consumer's choosing to do that is having an impact. So it's a mixture. Right risk framework, right systems, processes, tools, and skilled people to make sure they're catering for it. The right education, so that the population understands some of the decisions that they're making,
and understands how horrible people out there will continue to do horrible things. It's just extraordinary to me. But let's think more optimistically now. Let's look back at the evolution of new technologies, particularly the arrival of digital currencies. These things that are promising to be enabling cheaper, faster, better payments, and the arrival of stable coins in particular that have been said to be the new e-money. How relevant is this to most payment firms, in particular yours, and how soon do you think some of these things will make an impact?
Yeah. And look, as a little theme that's kind of been coming out of our conversation is the growth in digital has been and continues to be huge. So when we think about, it was cash and it's now digital, cash, card, digital, we're already there in a lot of instances. The crypto in Australia is growing, or it was significantly growing. I know crypto in Australia and across the world has had a bit of a hit, but I was again reading some Statista said 1 in 5 Australians already own crypto. And crypto.com was talking about the rise of digital economies in Australia, and of a recent survey that they did, about 55% of merchants and consumers surveyed said that they wanted to transact in crypto. So the market is there again. I know that they've had a hit, and I think the impact or the introduction of regulation is going to have a positive impact on that, and they also obviously need to make sure and be aware of consumer protection, for example, before it can really grow further. We as a company, I guess we've dipped our toe in it a little bit. We've worked with some organisations, and look, one of them only because Asher Tan, who is the CEO of CoinJar. You may have heard of CoinJar. They launched with us in Australia actually back in 2014. And they've now expanded. They're doing really well. They're over in the UK. We launched with them initially on a domestic product with us, and now they were the first tokenized product to go live with us being the issuer in Australia and the UK and Europe, and with MasterCard and Apple. And so that went live, about 12, 18 months ago now. And then that is allowing consumers who are trading in crypto to also have access to their money as if it's cash or mainstream, because they can trade and they've got access via CoinJar to about 40 odd cryptocurrencies, for example, and then it's allowing them to access that. We've tied in our EML issued tokenized MasterCard, which then allows them to spend wherever MasterCard's accepted across the globe.
Very nice.
So it's allowing them to still dabble in crypto, but also always have access to their funds.
Very good.
Which is great.
That's about bringing it into their everyday lives, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's certainly an area to watch, to continue to take small steps into. But yeah, I mean, they have been, the crypto market's obviously been hit a lot the last whatever.
The crypto asset, that's certainly true. It goes up and down, and it's been going down a lot. So thank you. That's fascinating. So the time's run away with me. We're almost half an hour in, I think. So Rachelle, final comment really is personal advice to young people. I'd like to hear your advice for young people thinking about a career in business, somebody who might want to follow in your footsteps. What would be your advice to them? Somebody who knocks on your door and says, Rachelle, what should I do if I want to follow in, if I want to be like you?
I would say go for it. I would say, and I'd literally say go for it. Like, we talked a little bit before about my journey, and I've never looked back. I think I've always said yes, and I've always just absolutely gone for it. And so I would give them that advice. I'd probably remind them of some of the values that we talked about before as well, because that's, I think, helped contribute to where I am today with that openness, with that one team approach. I probably remind them or encourage them to think about their values and what makes them tick and what drives them. I'd probably also tell them to be more of an SME to start off with, to rather than be wide, initially be that subject matter expert and take time to learn. As young people, you're always wanting the next promotion, and you'll get there. But I just think take your time, and if I look back, I probably would have done things a little bit slower, and learnt more about the way and along the way, and become that expert along the way rather than trying to be quite widely skilled. So that's probably the advice I'd give them. But again, I'd say just go for it.
Just go for it. Well, you've certainly just gone for it on this interview, Rachelle. Thank you so much. It's been great fun. I love chatting with you. It was great to see you in London, and hopefully I'll be seeing you in Brisbane one of these days. But on behalf of the whole community and certainly reflecting on our journey, looking forward to the next 20 years and seeing what you achieve in that time. Thank you so much, Rachelle Ledger, for EML CEO from Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. So lovely to spend time with you.
Very good.